This is the Leaders on Fire podcast. On this show, we'll be inviting guests in to talk about crucible moments in their lives and unpack how it developed character and perseverance and how they emerged as leaders on fire. We hope that this podcast is an encouragement and an inspiration to you. Today, we have in the studio Eric Lane. He is the founder and executive director of Fellowship Missions. It's a nonprofit right here in Warsaw, Indiana, and they focus on homelessness and addiction recovery. Man, they are doing some really great things. I'm excited to hear from Eric today and hear about some of his crucible moments that have shaped his leadership. Eric, welcome to the Leaders on Fire podcast. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. Appreciate you having me on, and look forward to this. This will be fun.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm super pumped to have you. I know a little bit of your story. We go back a little ways. I don't remember when. It was maybe mid-2000, 2005, somewhere in there, 2003. Yeah. I don't remember.
2005.
But I first met you when you were project superintendent for the Warsaw Community Church project. You weren't staff at WCC. You were with the contractor that they'd hired overseeing the project. So it'll be interesting to hear how you got from there to where you are today as executive director and founder of Fellowship Missions. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'll just start there. My background, commercial construction, project management, and architecture. I grew up in a family of contractors. My dad was a contractor. And so, when you and I met back in 04 and 05, that's what I was doing, was project manager, construction project manager, building WCC. And it was interesting in that season of life. That's what brought us to Warsaw. I mean, that was kind of that first step for God moving us around a little bit. And it was just, that's who I am, is that construction guy that's in my blood. But also probably the most important part about me is husband to Tammy Lane and father to Brooke, Braden, and Lily Lane. So we've got 3 kids. Now we have a son-in-law, a daughter-in-law, and we have a grandson, Liam, and with Braden and Liza's, and we have one that will be coming in November that we'll know here soon if it's a boy or a girl. So,
awesome.
We're really excited about that. But originally from Muncie, Indiana, spent less than half of our lives there. So now we've been up here in Warsaw area, but we just that's who we are. A very family-oriented couple, so do a lot of stuff with family. We love this area, but that's how we got here, man. It was working construction, and we literally fell in love with this area, and that's what made the decision.
So were you living in Muncie at the time?
Yeah, living in Muncie.
You had this project for Warsaw Community Church, and so you were commuting, or were you staying up here for
very
the project?
Very little. I mean, it was nice. A little over 2 hour commute one way every day. So it was 4 hour commute. So it gave me time to ramp up, and then also gave me a de-escalation time on the way home. Very few times did I stay up here overnight. But I just fell in love with the family feel of this community. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, tell us a little bit about your journey. So, we lit the fire, got to know you a little bit. Now I'm going to start fanning the flame, and we're going to work towards getting deeper here. But, wanted to find out a little bit more about what happened, like what hooks, the hook, line, and sinker that you got out of Warsaw. So we know it was the project at Warsaw Community Church, but when did you move here, and what did you do? Did you stay in construction, or did you make some sort of a shift? And what happened between there and Fellowship Missions?
So, interesting time. The construction company that I was actually working for had actually come to me and sat down and said, hey, we're going to open an office down in Carmel, Indiana, and had proposed a job down there. So we were actually, I don't know how serious we were at that time, but we were talking about it. I don't remember because we didn't talk about it long. But not too long after that, Denny and Rich Haddad had actually approached me and said, hey, we would love for you to come on staff and kind of be our facilities and event operations guy.
Of course they were. And they probably said, hey, you know what? We're going to give you a raise too.
Oh, yeah, that was it. It came with a lot of dollar signs. Yeah, no. But it was just so interesting because not too long before that, I feel, when my wife, she's not one to really make quick decisions. And I am. So we have to definitely balance each other out. And I always know when she's ready to do that, I know God's using her to speak to me, and he's got us unified. But they came to me and made this offer, and I went back to her. And I believe it was a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks before that, we'd had a tour of the building. And we'd gone to church. They were hosting church at Lakeview Middle School at that time. And we'd gone to church, and then we had this big open house at the building. It was nowhere near completion, and just got to know more people. And after that, I'll never forget, my wife got in the car. She shut the door, and she goes, "If you get a job opportunity up here, I'm ready to move." And I'm like, hold on. Something's happening. I'm like, all right, because Denny's I'd started riding bikes with him on the trails, and he'd always teased about if we'd come up here. And it wasn't long after that, the offer was there, and I didn't have to hesitate. We were like, yeah, we're ready. And then I had to tell my boss at Aspen Group that, hey, we're going to end up doing this, and they allowed me to close out the building, because literally the day I stopped working at Aspen Group, the next day was the first Sunday of the building, and I went to work.
Man, that's so
I get
crazy.
goosebumps about it now. So it was awesome. So it was a quick transition, and our life has been like that in many ways. It's when God has us both unified, they're very quick decisions. And my wife will always, we both talk about it, but she says, the power of a yes and what that can do. And, yeah, so that's just been our life. When we say yes, we just hold on and see what God does. It's been cool.
Man, that's crazy. I do vaguely remember seeing Eric Lane as kind of the superintendent of the Aspen Group, because I was involved at WCC, just volunteering and doing the worship team and different things like that, and supporters of their campaign. And then next thing you know, I'm seeing you every weekend on a Sunday up there. And I'm like, okay, what's happened here? And then find out that you got recruited away from Aspen during that project, and now you're on staff at WCC. Now, how long were you on staff there?
5 years. It was great experience, and again, another chapter, and also another pivotal point that brought us to where we are at now. I got exposed to Katrina, the aftermath of Katrina, and started going down there. Ended up leading close to 7 trips through WCC.
Oh, wow.
Doing that, and then it was funny. My wife and I were sitting at home one night, and man, I'm loving it, because one, construction. Love that, and love people. So I'm like, this is like my wheelhouse. Okay, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she looked at me one night and she goes, "We're not moving to Mississippi, are we?" I was like, wait. I said, I don't know, but I don't think so right now. It's just the way he's moved in our lives. But that's what got me connected in the church, but not in my role at the church. Started getting me connected in other ways. And again, just saying yes and being vulnerable to say, yeah, there's individuals that are hurting. Let's go help. And yeah, that started another journey at WCC.
Yeah, so kind of tell us the early seeds of fellowship missions, because you were at WCC for 5 years, and I know that we'll enter the crucible in a little bit, and I know there's a deeper part to this story, but for now, just kind of talk about, what was that tap on the shoulder? What was that transition like? So you're at WCC for 5 years, with all of a sudden like, hey, I'm going to start a homeless shelter in recovery place for addicts and for homeless, and we're going to start tomorrow. Or did it slowly, like, were you overlapping both before you went full time? I feel like there was a period of like a couple of years where you were in both before you went full time. I don't know how long that was, but kind of just talk about that a little bit.
It was actually pretty quick. It was just several months, actually, and there was overlap, so we were doing both. And you're right, there is that tap on the shoulder moment, and without getting too deep into that, is really that for us, James 2:14-17, faith and deeds. And there's a lot of needs out there, and we have so many resources. And for us to say, hey, go be warm and well fed and do nothing about it, just it was the thorn in my side. And that's kind of, again, being very brief about it, that's what kind of led us to the decision that we made to start Fellowship Mission.
The awareness must have come through some sort of exposure. Like, how did you know there was a need? Because for God to tap you on the shoulder, you had to have some awareness or an exposure to a problem.
Yeah. So the season before that, so December 2009 and January, February, March of 2010, there was actually a shelter that was shared between 3 different agencies, or 3 different churches, actually. Ours happened to be one of them, and I went to Denny and Rich, said, hey, as far as number-wise, we're the largest church in the community. We need to be a part of this, and how are we going to serve people in our community in this capacity? And they said, yeah, go for it. I'm like, I have no idea what we're going to do. So we held a meeting one night. There was a church that was hosting it in December, and then we were going to take January, and then another church in February, and then we ended up hosting again in March. And we went one night and had a meeting with anybody who's interested in volunteering, and we had all of our volunteers one night in January. And really how God started working on us is we got to know the individuals that were coming in. The very first night we had a Mike, we called him Little Mike, and then 2 Steves. One of the Steves he passed away probably 5 years ago, and then the other one just texted me a couple nights ago. He's now living in Kentucky, which is really cool. He's now a grandpa down there. But it was just about getting to know people, getting to hear their stories, getting to know them on a very personal level, what makes them tick, putting puzzles together, playing basketball in the back parking lot, just sitting down having meals, and that's what really started to move our hearts. There was one other moment that the very first night that we hosted, that next morning, we would take the guys over to McDonald's and usually buy them something to eat, and then, because it wasn't a day, it was just overnight, 7 p.m. to like 7 a.m., because we were hosting in the bottom of the offices at the church. And I remember taking those 3 guys, and I'll never forget where we sat, the booth, and to our left was the drive-through. There was a window to the drive-through, and I remember sitting and watching people actually sidestep our table, because if you were going to stereotype someone who doesn't have a home and that could live on the streets, it would have been those 3 guys, 3 beautiful guys. But you would have done that. And I watched people sidestep our table. And I mean, they literally went around to go out the door that was a couple booths behind us. And I remember in that moment, God hitting me. Now, it wasn't a 2x4 moment. It was a 4x4 moment, going, how many times have you done that?
Yeah.
And I've learned since then, we are all God's children, created in His image, no different. We all have different circumstances, but not created any different. And how dare you? How many times have you done this, and how dare you do that? And really opened my eyes, and I had no idea what was going on then. I mean, it wrecked me that morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like a familiar story out of the Gospels, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, are you getting warmed up? You feeling
Sure, man.
warmed up here?
Let's do it.
All right, well, we're going to crank up the heat and enter the crucible. So,
oh, boy.
Let's talk about a crucible moment in your life, and I'm assuming that it has to do with the transition into fellowship missions. And having known just a little bit of your story and interacting over the years, I know that launching a nonprofit in and of itself can be challenging. What you set out to do was incredibly challenging, and I know that there was an enormous amount of time and sweat and tears and stress and a lot of things that went along with the beautiful outcome that we see today, and that we've seen along the way. And so people from the outside looking in go, oh, look at this wonderful little ministry and all the things they're doing there. But man, behind the curtain, there is a lot that's been going on. And a lot of that you've carried on your shoulders. Now you've got an amazing team, and you've had support and team along the way.
Yeah.
But I know it's not been an easy journey. So there's probably a lot to unpack in the whole story of fellowship missions, but pick a crucible moment or one or two that you really feel like might be an encouragement to those listening about persevering through the hard stuff, persevering through the crucible moments, so that you can emerge with refined character and as a leader on fire.
Getting to where we're at now, again, this is all God's. We've been blessed to be a part of this journey, but how it all started was actually what I was just sharing earlier about getting exposed to it, right? And then seeing a need in our community. then what's next, right? Then it's the wrestling going, okay, God, what do you want done? Give me the to-do list and I'll go do it. Well, that's not exactly how it works, as you know. So, I'm waiting. God, I'm ready. I'll do this. Just give me the list. Give me all of this. And so during this time, we actually, at the end of March of 2010, we're like, where are these gentlemen going? We actually had 9 guys inside the church offices at that moment. And we're like, okay, this can't be all that it is, And again, there's resources all around us. So I actually went to one of the staff members at WCC. I knew he had a rental home. And I said, hey, Joe, got a question. Would you and your wife consider renting this home? And he said, for what? And I said, well, we need a place for these guys. And so came back a couple days later. Luckily, it was 3 days before we were supposed to end in March. And he said, yeah, we'd love to. Gave us the price. And we were like, all right, we're going to do it. I had no idea what was going to happen, or we just knew, okay, God's stirring us to keep moving forward. So April 1st comes. It wasn't an April Fool's joke. We moved 7 of the 9 guys into this house.
Wow.
And it was total Animal House kind of look, the picnic table for a dining room table, all of this. And then it's kind of like, okay, so we have these guys, they have a safe roof over their head, but there's got to be more. So then this whole process. We're going through the book Experiencing God by Blackaby. It was actually my 3rd time going through this book, so I must have needed it quite a bit. And our small group at one point in time actually had a intervention with me and my wife, and we started into the book one group time, and they all closed and said, hey, we're praying for you guys. We see it in you. What's going on? And what's interesting is the other 3 couples all worked at WCC. One of the members of the couple worked at WCC. And then my wife and I, we went away. And so I'm wrestling every single day. Okay, God, just give me the to-do list. And he's not.
What year was this?
This was 2010.
Okay.
So he's not giving it to me. My wife's giving me, we're both in sync, okay? She's giving me encouraging scriptures every day. We're talking about it. We go away to a pastor's retreat in Holmes County, Ohio, middle of Amish country, beautiful area. And I don't know, man. It's just, I wanted everything nice and tidy. You've got a house, you've got a car, you've got these things, right? I mean, you've been there, done that. And it's like, how does this work? I'm willing to do it, but I need something, God, from you. And it's not how it really worked out. But it did work out that way, actually. And so we go away to Holmes County, and I think this was a very pivotal moment for me personally. We go away, we have all of our couples time together, but there was one day we went away, and they made us go separate. So the whole morning we went our own direction, and then came back at lunchtime. And there were a couple Adirondack chairs down in this little ravine that looked into a woods. And I don't know that I've ever heard God, well, I have never really heard him speak audibly through people, through the Spirit, but I've never audibly until this moment. And I'm sitting there and I am wrestling. God, I've got this. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And that was always my question. What do you want me to do? And I'll never forget it. Just this whisper, and that's scriptural too, obviously, this whisper saying, I've already told you what to do. And I'm like, crap. That was the to-do list. I've already told you what I want you to do. And I knew what that meant. So my wife and I talked about it more. We get back from our time from there, and guess what happens? We get back into our human rhythm. And I'm like, no, you still got to show me. You got to, I don't even know what I was expecting him to show me. I don't know if it was like this windfall of donations to say, hey, start this thing. But it wasn't, it was a couple, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks after that, I walked into the doors at WCC and I stopped. So there's 2 sets of doors. And right before you get into the main lobby area, I stopped in the vestibule area and I just started crying. And I knew that was it. And I'm getting I'll never forget that. All of that came back. I've told you what to do. And I went upstairs. I wrote my resignation letter. No clue what was next. Zero. Work for a church. There's no, there's no pension. There's no, on-ramp there. But had a lot of support from the church to move forward. And I remember calling my wife and saying, I'm writing it. She goes, okay.
Wow.
I mean, it was, and again, I think he had us unified, but going back, it was the relationships that started the journey. And then it was the willingness to say yes. And we're I'm not, just because we say yes, what doesn't mean we're any different. I say it to encourage somebody else that, man, if you're struggling saying yes, struggle with what it is to say no or not say anything at all. Because, man, there is that, I don't know, we've seen blessing after blessing after blessing from that. And I'm not saying monetary blessings. We look at what the organization and how many people it's helping now. I didn't know that I was going to get into this, but we have a beautiful 6-year-old because of it. That we adopted when she was, 4 months old from the shelter. You just never know what a yes to what God's got you doing can turn into. And I don't even know what else to say about that. It's just, if you're in that moment, man, and you're struggling with taking that next step, that's what he asks us to do. He asks us to get dirty. That's the life we're supposed to live. We're supposed to be with each other in relationships. And so we come out of that and we are where we're at today. I mean, it's not that there hasn't been struggle. There's been a lot of struggle. Part of that is, what's our community going to say? I mean, we had so many individuals that were naysayers in what we wanted to do. I mean, we live in a heavy religious community. And there are people that we don't have this here. There aren't people in need here. There's people in need everywhere. But what I'll say on the other side of that is, it's been a wonderful thing with our community too, because our community has just raised up and been so supportive, not just of FM, but even just the people that we serve and the people in our community that are in need. So that just came through education, and he used us to do that as well. So there's, it's just not starting. Then it's all the other things that come with it, and, being part of the community that may not see what we see, and you need to educate, so you bear all of that weight as well. But overall, it's all this stuff has just been awesome. When we were able to relinquish our wants and needs and control over the situation to what he wanted. And I think that's what led me out of that time in where I'm just questioning and I question myself as well. Can I actually do this? Can I lead? And it's not like I'm no better than anybody else. It's just something that he lit a fire in me to do, and my wife to do. And it's not rocket science to follow him and to do what he wants you to do and to love others well. And so, that's just what we do.
So how long was that crucible season? I mean, is there a time that you could point to that you were able to look back and reflect on all that had been done, and now you feel like, okay, you emerged, you've out of that season. Maybe you've entered a different one or a different crucible, but you've come out of that one. Was there a length of time that you can recall?
I wish I could say, man, it's been 2-3 years, but I think he's done little ones, right? It was our move up here. Then it was the actually going on missions. That was a step out for me. And then starting fellowship missions. And now we've ventured into several different things with the recovery and the mental health, and then the adoption of our 6-year-old. All these things, I'd say the adoption was not a moment. That was very quick. We were both on board real quick. But with the change to FM, I mean, it was 2-3 months, really wrestling. But I'd say if I narrowed that down, there was a month of me just really wrestling, because I started weighing out, okay, I'm sitting here in my office, but all this other stuff is weighing on me. God, what's going on? Help me understand what this next thing looks like. And it was, reading with the thorn in your side, and that was the thorn in my side at that moment, and I couldn't shake it. And finally, until I released it, right, until I finally let go of the things that I was holding on to. I always look at it as the calling of the first disciples. What are the nets we're holding on to? So what nets did I have to let go of to do that? And that was a heavy month for me. But if I had to put a timeline to it, that's about what it was. Yeah.
Well, the cool thing about that, though, is that each of those smaller crucibles were preparatory steps. And we had that similar type thing happen in our lives before we were able to say yes to the call to move our family, halfway around the world to go to the Papua New Guinea, the jungle. If we hadn't had those crucible preparatory seasons of life, we wouldn't have been in a position to say yes, or perhaps even hear from God on that. And so hopefully that's an encouragement to people that each of those difficult seasons, or those challenges, or where we're stretched, or where the heat's cranked up, it's all for our good, and it's all for a purpose. And, I want to go back to something you said. A couple of the foundational scriptures for leaders on fire, one of them is Ephesians 2:10. And, this idea that we're God's masterpiece, and he's created in advance good works for us to do. And when we put our faith in Jesus and we say yes to him, we can live and walk in those works. Now, you said something else that reminded me of Ephesians 3:20. You said, he's done more than we could, I can't remember your exact words, but he's blown us away. He's blessed us with more than we can imagine, not monetarily, but just, overall an abundance of joy and blessing and all the fruit. And Ephesians 3:20 says, he'll do immeasurably more than all you can ask, think, or imagine, according to the power of Christ that's at work within us. And so when we understand that we're created a masterpiece and that we've got good works that he's prepared in advance for us to do, and we say yes, he's able to do immeasurably more, than what all we can think, ask, or imagine. And I can relate to that similarly. Like when we said yes to go to Papua New Guinea, like we did not know what that meant. We really had no idea what was before us. We'd never been there before. We hadn't been involved in tribal church planning or missions, really, for that matter. We've been on one missions trip before that, And so I think this idea of, I'm glad you brought it up and you stated it that way, of saying yes. And you were in that struggle. And I love the fact that you were in that Adirondack chair and the whisper that came, and you were probably even expecting for some incredible revelation of like, that's it. And I know exactly what I'm going to do. And he says, I've already told you. I've already told you. And that probably sucked. Like,
it did. Man. Oh, it did. Because it's like, okay, you're just telling me to say yes, but what am I saying yes to, right? It's still not that plan. And that's what I love about that scripture, that he's created us for good works that he's planned. So my background, I want the blueprint. I want that whole blueprint. I want to be able to flip through it, which we have it in the Bible, but it's still, you gotta, just saying yes can unlock all that stuff.
That had to have been super challenging for you. Because of that, because you are a plan follower, and it's black and white, and you've got to follow it to a T, right? And so you're ready for your marching orders. But he said, it's a white canvas. I'm just asking you to say yes to this over here, and I'm not going to actually show you all the details yet. Perhaps because you might have said no if you would have known all the details.
In something I've shared with people before, it's so freeing when you say yes. It's like, holy cow, wait a minute, it's not about me. It's about him, and he's going to guide me. I still have a lot of responsibility and a lot of things to do, but man, I will say that with the hard times, it's been freeing knowing that we're in his will and moving in his direction. Now, you still get caught up sometimes in your own junk. That happens. And so we pay for those times, but man, it's so much more freeing when you can say yes and do it his way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you for being faithful, for you and Tammy, and for giving us something to talk about. And hopefully it's a story that inspires people that are listening, and those that are in a crucible moment, and are struggling, to know that there is hope and that it is for a purpose, and that sometimes God is leaving you in that crucible until, like you said, you either let go of the nets and you say yes.
Yeah.
And he's going to keep you in that tension sometimes for as long as you want to be in there until you let go, right?
Yeah,
And he's patient with that. So thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for what you're doing through Fellowship Mission and how God is using you guys. And yeah, thanks for coming on the show and being vulnerable and sharing with us, man.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Awesome, man. Thanks. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Perhaps it has prompted a painful memory, or challenge you to reflect on times you were in the crucible. Some of you may be in a crucible now, but be encouraged. Maybe, just maybe, God is using this to refine your character so that you emerge as a leader on fire. If today's episode was an encouragement to you, share it with others who may also find encouragement in the Leaders on Fire podcast. So, let's go into the world sent out as leaders on fire. Until next time.